Hi everyone. Today we're gonna do part two of our Hydra workshops. Last time we did basic color and geometry and figuring out how to get started. And today we'll do a little bit more and we'll add some more advanced concepts like blending, modulating, and even doing some audio responsiveness. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. We'll get started. Um, so here we are. So let's just enter basic source. Let's go ahead and do, I don't know, let's do OSC point 2. Remember this for OSC, this determines the speed. And then let's make it colorful, which is determined by the last number. And we'll put that out. Remember, Alt Enter is how you enter a block. So here we are. We have a basic oscillating pattern. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple of ways to blend different shapes into this. So these blend elements all require another source. And remember, what a source is this very first thing. So that could be OSC, it could be shape, it could be maybe you're pulling from another tab, and I'll show you how to do that today, actually. Maybe it's noise, maybe it's Voronoi, but that's the source, right? So all other blend elements actually require another source, right? So let's go ahead and I'll show you first add, okay? So say we wanted to add on top of this just a shape. Maybe it's a shape. So I'm gonna do add shape. Let's have it be maybe a triangle, sort of medium size, okay? You're gonna put a parentheses around that, and then you need to do another parentheses. Because why? Because here you have the shape, but you need to do another pair of parentheses because you're adding this whole thing, right? Remember, you always need a period in front of this because you're sort of adding modifiers to the original thing. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. Okay, so this is very basic, but basically all this did is this added a shape onto that. Pretty self-explanatory for the most part. Now let me show you what happens when it's maybe not a shape, when it's maybe OSC, but maybe there's more. Maybe there's 20, and it's maybe rotated a little bit. So let's have it be that. So what you can see is happening here is it's pretty bright. And the reason why it's so bright is because the two images are overlaid on top of each other. So the images are sort of doing what the combination is of the two, which means it's going to be sort of brighter most of the time. And that's why you see a lot of this like little white section that's sort of going over. It's because when overlaid on top of the other one, the result is sort of an image. So these are sort of the composite images laid on top of each other, if that makes sense. Next, we're gonna try difference. So I'm just gonna show you what that looks like if I just plug this straight in. So this is actually the difference of the two images. So rather than adding them together, which means it's going to be brighter, this is sort of the opposite. So you see these little black sections, that's where it's sort of the composite image is sort of the colors that sort of result in black lines going up the screen, if that makes sense, okay? And I'll come back to difference in a bit when we're talking about feedback, and I'll talk about feedback when we start to talk at the end of blending, how we sort of do stuff with that, okay? Next is layer. Layer is slightly different. It doesn't make the composite result. It's not as if you're like meshing the images together, but they exist as two separate layers. And so I'll sort of show you what that means. Say we have this, we have basic oscillation thing. Let's make it a little bit higher, let's do 30. Okay. And say we want to layer it with another oscillation pattern, but sort of in a different direction. Let's rotate it 50 degrees. Okay. Oh, I know what I did wrong. Okay, we need to add a Luma function. I'll tell you what that means in a moment. There we go. I knew it was somewhere. So let me talk to you about what's happening here. So basically, layer just has the two images sort of, again, layered right on top of each other. But the reason why I need this Luma is because if I take it out, it just shows me this. It just shows me OSC 40 oscillations at 0.1 speed, rotated by 50. It just shows me that. And the reason why it just shows me that is because that is just one image. This is one image, and it's basically just lying right on top of the other image. But when I add Luma, so I add Luma, Luma basically says for any part of the picture that isn't brighter than a certain amount, okay? So say the black parts of the picture basically are not very bright, it basically deletes it. It takes it out, right? So that means when it's deleted, it's invisible, I can actually see what's underneath it. So if I were to put this back in, you see that in the places where there were those black divots, you can now see what's underneath. So that's what Luma does. Okay. So the next we have is multiply. So basically what this does is this is really good for something like shadows. And without getting into like the nitty-gritty of what it means to multiply something, basically when you multiply something, all of this is going to be like a silhouette. It's how I sort of imagine it as, for the most part. If I take out Luma, it's the same. So this is a really cool, like you can make sort of noir images through something like this, but all you really need to remember is multiply sort of shadows or silhouettes, okay? And I think that's good for us, for our purposes. Okay. Now for the next one, I actually want to teach you two things. I'm going to teach you how to make your current screen I'm going to teach you how to make your current screen like a source, and I'm going to show you how to make a webcam a source. Let's start with the webcam. So this is the sort of, you just have to memorize the syntax, but to make it a source, you go s0 dot init, which stands for initiate, cam, okay, and you'll sort of enter that, okay, and then you can do your code, I mean. So you'll source, remember source is for sort of any other texture, S0, because that is our texture abbreviation up there, and then you do out. So now you can see I'm being sort of pulled from my camera, and now I'm being used as a source, which is kind of fun. I can do a lot of crazy things to myself. For example, like that. So that's a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun things you can do there. The reason why I wanted to show you that is because I can do a lot of fun things, and this is just something I've done before. So say I have a shape. The shape is going to be a circle, a sort of oval shape. It's going to be somewhat large, and that's good for now. Okay, we have our oval shape. Say I wanted to take whatever in my webcam and make that the sort of part in the middle of the shape. You can do that with a function called mask. So dot mask, and you in the parentheses of mask, you sort of put whatever source you want to be the masking thing. So I want my face to be the masking object. So SO, I'll put SO in here, I'll enter, and now I'm the masking thing. I will say one thing that is bizarre that I haven't even figured out is mask has issues with color. And whenever you use it as a source, it takes color out. That's not really something that is figured out, and I'm sure they're in beta testing, but that is one thing to consider here. Okay. And the last thing I am going to show, I'm trying to figure out how I want to do this. Okay, let's return to our layers from before. So we have this, we're going to layer in 40.2, rotate 30, Luma, boom, boom, out. Unexpected token. Where is that unexpected token? Oh, my bad. Okay, we have those layers that we did a little bit earlier. Say, hypothetically, I wanted to blend everything in a little bit. I wanted everything to be a little bit more, I don't know, sluggish. Maybe that's not the right word, but sort of like dragging and more smoothed out. I know I'm being vague here, but let me just show you what I mean. We have a blend function that we'll use to do that. And here's where we'll talk a little bit about feedback. Okay, what's feedback? Right here, the out thing, what's implicitly going on is we have this. This O stands for out, makes sense? And then this stands for like what number outs. You can have multiple outs, for instance, and just since we only have one thing going out, it defaults to 0, okay? Now what I can do, I can take my out and make it a new source. I can make my out an in. And whenever you do that, that's called feedback. And blend is cool because you can make sort of, it doesn't really look like feedback, but it becomes sort of this like blended thing. So I'll sort of show you what this looks like. So that wasn't really that much, but you can sort of see it's like dragging a little bit. Let me make that a little more up. Oop, that was a bit too much. There we go. Okay, that's where you get dramatic. So it goes from 0 to 1, the second thing in blend, you have the source, and then you have the amount from 0 to 1. 1 is like the most. So at 0.9, you can sort of see how it's like really blended out. It's almost like impressionistic, blurry, as if you're closing your eyes. So basically, it's taking this, okay, and then re-blending it back in. And so it's just constantly in the circle of blending out, which is why as I get larger, it becomes more dramatic, right? So that's really cool effect, blend. And I wanted to show you something with this. So say I have some shapes like that, and maybe they're sort of, there's two of them repeating, and maybe I do some of this. I'll teach you about this in a second, but this basically means they're sort of moving around. Okay. Okay. So I have this sort of like moving shape thing going towards the side, okay? So what I can do, remember, what's sort of implicitly happening is we have this out, this zero out. What I can do is this really cool effect with difference. So, which looks like that. Now let me show you what this looks like. Oh, unexpected token, that's that. So why is it doing that? The reason why this is happening is because it's basically taking the previous image and doing the difference of it. And so it's like staying, it's like leaving an imprint almost, which is a very, very, very cool effect that I am very, very fond of. And I use this particular effect quite a bit. And there you can see it's a little bit more dramatic. And I'm using Luma again. Okay, just trying some stuff out here. Anyway, I was just trying some stuff out. But yeah, that's sort of how feedback works. Another thing that works really well with feedback, say I have, okay, let's go back. So I have this, it's our original thing. Say I wanted the imprints to like expand outwards and to move a little bit, because right now it's sort of staying in place. It's kind of boring. Well, what you would do is you would do something like this. Which is a very, very fun effect, if I do say so myself. Now, why is this happening? And that's a really intense version of that. Why is this happening? The reason why this is happening is because since it's taking the difference of something that's slightly bigger than it. Remember, scale makes it slightly bigger. Because of doing the difference of something slightly bigger than it, that means that it's subtracting by something that's slightly bigger. And the more it does that, the bigger and bigger it gets. So it creates this image of something like zooming in. And that's a really fun effect that I use a lot. Okay, let's talk about modulate now. I'm going to trash this code. Modulate. Now, I'm going to do, we're going to start where we often start, which is with oscillate. Out. Okay. Get a little slower. So modulate, all the modulate functions are basically functions that let you take one source and sort of influence it with the sort of shape of it in another source. And I'll sort of show you what this means. So I have OSC point out, and say I wanted to modulate this over sort of another OSC. I'll sort of show you what that looks like. Oh, I need to add OSC. Can't read my mind. So as you can see, oh, you know what I should do? I should sort of. So as you can see, there are parts that are like bigger that are moving at a different rate as this first thing. So what is basically happening is this one, which is going slightly faster, is actually determining where these sort of big oscillations are going on. So it's influencing what the original image um, is outputting, because it's sort of um, it's almost as if it's like underneath it, like sort of like I think of it like pizza dough, and when my fingers are like under the pizza dough pressing outwards, my fingers are like modulating the pizza dough shape, if that makes sense. I know that's a weird analogy maybe, but um, let's try like if I do noise, you can see how and maybe that's too many. Let's do like 3. So you can still see how the sort of the colors and the oscillations are occurring, but it's modulated by the noise shapes, right? And the same is true if I do like Voronoi. So now you can clearly see how Voronoi is influencing those shapes now. And if I was to do SO Cam, if I was to actually use my face to modulate it, you can see that I'm actually modulating the OSC now, which is actually a very, very fun effect, if I do say so myself. And there's a couple of different kinds of modulates too. Which I do first? I'll just show you all the modulates first, and then I'll show you modulate what happens when you feedback it, okay? So modulate, we have that. Modulate rotate is another one. So what's going on here? Okay, so as you can see, my face, everything's going a specific direction, but as soon as it hits my face, you can see it sort of rotated a slightly different direction. And that's what modulate rotate does. Whenever there's like a change in the geometry of a shape, it changes direction. So let's actually, instead of this, do like OSC 10. So this is what happens when it's sort of put on top of like an OSC thing. Depending on the geometry, it's actually rotated in a very specific way. Let's go back to my face, because I think that's kind of fun, actually. Okay, we're back. So there's modulate rotate. We also have modulate collide. Okay. So as you can see, in different parts of my face, it's sort of doing a kaleidoscope differently. Actually, this one's sort of hard to show me. So let's do OSC. So OSC 20 is sort of on top of this, and as you can see, the kaleidoscope sort of focus point, the center is just changing and going along depending on where this shape is. And so if I make it larger, you can see now as 100, there's a bunch more of the tiny focal points for the kaleidoscope. Okay. If we did, there's also modulate repeat. Okay, let's try something much smaller. Let's do noise. Let's do noise 3. So as you can see, noise repeat sort of is similar to modulate when we did noise, but what it's doing here is it's actually changing how many times it like repeats. And let's try actually shape, because I think that might show you something interesting. So here, what's actually interesting is that you can sort of see where it's like like repeating, going in and out of repeating depending on the noise, and that's sort of what Modulate Repeat does. We also have Modulate Scroll X. And let's do like an OSC one for that. Maybe a bit more. So this one scrolls, sort of does the scroll X function depending and sort of modulated by the OSC 20. You can also do that with Y. They're interchangeable. Modulate, oh, that's not what I meant to do. So now you can see that happening vertically. And then last but not least, we have Modulate Pixelate, which modulates the pixelate function. So this is very, very cool, actually. You see how it's sort of beginning to sort of pixelate out and create shapes from this over this. There's sort of effect that I really love when I use Modulate Pixelate. Yes. Oh, out. Okay, so I have myself. If I do Modulate Pixelate, my bad, Pixelate. So I'm going to show you this first. Oh. Okay, so first there's that. That's sort of crazy. But if I keep going, let's say I want to pixelate this part, 8 by 8. Okay, so that's what that looks like. You can see how the pixels are actually changing. That's the sort of effect I want in the end. Right? But if I make this number, if I want it to do a lot of it, what basically happens, I can sort of add an amount. So if 1,000 is a big number. Now, the pixels are 1,000 by 1,000, but the 8 by 8 pixels are sort of rapidly changing until it goes from 1,000 to 1,000 to the sort of amount that that it is sort of right here. So that's kind of a very cool effect that I really love too. And if I was to make this number bigger, it would sort of happen on bigger squares and even bigger. Here now you can see it happening in the quadrants. As promised, I want to show you some feedback. So I just have modulate now, okay? And remember what happens is out is always that. And if I modulate the feedback, if I modulate and then enter the out as an in, I get really cool sort of glitchy effect. And you can do a lot of that. So if I do it 100, it's just noise. It's just craziness. And even if I do 10, 1 is also pretty insane. I think like 0.7 is probably, even then, let's do 3. So you can see it gets pretty crazy at some point, right? Even 0.1 is kind of wild. And if I wanted to sort of make this a bit smoother, I can blend it out like I did last time. And now you see it's definitely a bit more blended. You see how I'm like dragging about. It's a very, very cool effect, I think. All right, last but not least for today, and perhaps we'll do more Hydra workshops because I feel like there's definitely more to explore here. I want to show you audio responsiveness. So, audio responsiveness. To show your audio levels, it should connect to a microphone right away. What you'll type is a.show, then the parentheses side by side. And once you do that, you'll actually see in this bottom right-hand corner, you'll see your levels start appearing. And that's helpful just because it shows you how loud something is. From left to right, you'll see sort of frequencies. So this lowest one is the lowest frequency, this one's the highest frequency. You can sort of create, and so they're sort of separating the range of frequencies possibles into 4 different categories automatically. But say you wanted more nuance, you can actually set bins. So you can do that like this. A.setBins, say you wanted 6. So now you can see there are 6 bins, which means that the range of frequencies are categorized into 4. So if you wanted something nuanced in the middle, you would pull, you could select sort of that bin. And I'll show you what that means. So say I wanted, when I talk and it's sort of the bass sound, I wanted my image to get a little larger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use scale. And then what I will do is, instead of putting a number, I'll use this sort of structure. I'll do the parentheses, and I'll make a little arrow, equal sign, and then a little like arrow sign. And then I will enter a.fft, 2 brackets, and inside of the brackets, I'll select the bin. So for this, I'll do 0. So this basically means is that the number that will occur usually here will be determined by this bin, okay? Now I'll show you what that looks like. Oh, scale is not defined, I need a dot. Whoa, 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 whoa. What's the problem here? The problem is that when I'm not talking, it's actually set to 0. But we don't really want it to be set to 0, right? We just want it to be slightly bigger. So this is an issue. So what I can do, I can add 1. Okay, well that's all good. And now it's slightly, let's say I don't want it to be this like dramatic, going into my eye every single time I talk. It's an interesting effect, but maybe I don't really want that necessarily. What I can do is I can divide using the little dash to make it a less intense. So if I do it, if I divide by like 5, what happens? So now if I divide by 5, it's a little bit less. I could even do less. So now I'm dividing by 10, and it's just a little bit. So I think this is actually much better. So that's just something you might have to do, is you might have to scale the amount of response to make sure that it's not too intense. Okay? And you can do this for a lot of things. You can put this into modulate, you can put this into the amount of sides and a shape you want. So there's a lot of different things you can do here. All right. So I think that's actually it for the second Hydra workshop. Perhaps we'll run some more workshops digging into the really advanced stuff that I sort of started you on today. But thank you so much for watching my workshop. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at northbay@digitalcreator.ca. And I look forward to hearing from you all. Thanks.